So thank you so much for joining my podcast, Tal. Let me give our listeners a quick brief about you. So we actually know each other for quite some time now. We first met on the year 2000 while we were working together for a consulting company based out of Israel. We even went to the same college before going our separate ways. Um, Although I think you went on a slightly different route than I did. But we did attend the same college. And after almost 8 years working as a project manager and an information security consultant, you went ahead and moved into the corporate world, landing your first big gig at Canon. Moving up the ladder, you eventually held the information security manager for the EMEA region. After 9 years, which is quite a lot at Canon, you moved on
to myself.
Yeah. So after 9 years, you moved yourself to Seva Logistics and served as a CISO and VP for almost 3 years. And about 6 months back, you actually moved to Carlsberg, thus combining your two passions, beer and cyber. Did I miss? Yeah. Did I miss anything out? I'm sure I have. But do you feel there are any like major milestones or landmarks I should have mentioned, or anything else that you want to add?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I might add that I have also a few years experience also back from my military service, which I ended up landing a position of the head of security for what was then the central IT campus of the military. Such as it was, security at that point was quite a long time ago. The security looked completely different, but it was maybe my first touch point with this field, my first serious touch point with the field of IT security or cybersecurity.
Yeah, I remember. I think that when you started working for the same consulting company I did, I think you were fresh out of the military, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
I wasn't actually planning to work straight as out of the military because I spent quite a few years there, but it was the height of the dot-com period before everything blew up, and the salaries back then were insane. And for someone that just finished with military salary, it was like, wow, I can make a lot of money outside, so let's do it.
Yeah, I remember those times.
Yeah,
quite fondly, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a bit of a, like on a personal note about yourself, I know that you're married. I know you have 2 children. Remind me again, boy and a girl?
Yes, almost 10.5-year-old boy and a almost 7-year-old girl. And funny enough, because I've been in the Netherlands now for the last 12 years or so, both of them were born in the Netherlands, and they're actually bilingual, or in the case of my son, he's actually trilingual. He speaks already 3 languages fluently, which I'm quite envious. So they're at the point when they're correcting my accent in Dutch, not to talk about my grammar, right? So it's quite interesting, raising kids in a country that you were not born in. Yeah. Because it's a different experience, and they're a good combination, I think, between Dutch and Israeli.
Yeah, I actually didn't know we were so close apart. So my son will be turning 10 in about a month, and my daughter is about 7. So
okay, so more or less the same. Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, the problem with raising them in the Netherlands is that we don't have any more languages we can speak that they don't understand.
Yeah.
So if we need to kind of exchange in secrets, it's WhatsApping to each other, basically.
Yeah, so I've been having the same issue here. So, we moved to the US about 1.5 years ago, and by now they understand English, obviously. So we can't really communicate in English anymore.
Yeah. So probably their accent is better as well, right?
Yeah, of course. So we just vote not to talk at all. So with each other about the kids. Yeah, that's what we do.
Safest option. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a fixed question that I always ask here, which is what's your favorite drink? And I do realize that you now work for Carlsberg, so let's ask pre-Carlsberg and post-Carlsberg.
Yeah. So let's say pre-Carlsberg, I'm quite a big whiskey drinker, and I tend to lean to the more heavily peated whiskey. So I would say that my kind of regular household one is Ardbeg, and I tend to go to the cask strength ones because I like melting my insides. But of course, once I joined Carlsberg, I'm not allowed to like anything other than Carlsberg. But the nice thing about it is that, you know, especially coming from Israel, where you can only find a couple of the Carlsberg brands, I didn't realize that Carlsberg has over 140 different brands of beer, and I've never seen most of them.
Wow, that's a lot.
I'm kind of going through a big journey of tasting every single thing that the company is manufacturing. So far, my favorite is it's a brand. It's called Jakobson, which is the kind of premium brand of Carlsberg, and specifically the IPA, which is called Yakima. It's a very kind of and the funny thing is that I'm not even a big fan of IPA, right? But it's good stuff. So that's my current trade of beer.
Well, that's a worthy cause, you know, tasting 140 brands of beer.
Yep,
Yeah,
and 600 different types of beer, right? So it's 140, but over 600 types of beer.
wow. Well, definitely you
Yeah.
have your work, you know, cut out for you. So good
Yes.
luck with that. So really, I mean, I think the main reason I asked you to join my podcast here is, as I think we've discussed in the past, I'm trying to get a more personal feel and a more personal touch on CISOs and CISOs' lives and experiences, and I'm trying to understand better about, you know, what makes you tick. And I'm not gonna ask too many like professional questions and nothing about vendors or anything like that, but I do wanna touch a bit about like vendor relationships and you know, your experience with working with vendors, working with partners, working with your customers and your employees. So it's a bit more of like a personal approach. So if you're comfortable with that, let's just dive right in, and I'll
Sure.
ask you a bunch of quick questions here. So what's the one thing you wish you'd known when you began your career?
Um, I would probably say that I've learned that it's okay not to know everything. Because especially in security, this is a field that just develops over and over and over again. Yeah, like if you don't learn something this week, then you probably did something wrong. But at the first few years of my kind of journey into security, I was really stressed out about the fact that I didn't know this and I didn't know that, and I tried to grab everything. And over the time, you realize that it's okay not to know everything, especially as a CISO, as long as you know what you don't know and you're not ashamed to actually ask people that do know. I think that's the thing. I can't be expert on anything, right? So
Yeah.
in some areas when I think I'm definitely better, some areas I'm not, but I know what my weaknesses are and I know who to ask when I need some assistance.
Yeah, I think someone had said once, surround yourself by smarter people
Yes,
than
definitely,
yourself. Yeah. So
definitely.
yeah, that's what I try to do. Uh, um, moving on, what's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
My biggest failure. Um, I think I can't really mark anything as my biggest failure, but I definitely had failures or issues that I caused during my career. One thing that I learned the hard way is that every single thing that I do will have an impact either on people's lives in the organization, even if it's a little minor thing, you know, in terms of user experience, or more drastically will have an impact over the people that actually run IT. And I had a colleague back in Canon who ran IT operations, and I was in a meeting with him when I told him, "Oh, let's just turn on that security option." I don't remember what it was, and you know, it's just a tick in the box, and it's fine. And he stopped the meeting and he looked at me. He's a really scary English guy. He looked at me and he said, "Never ever use that term next to me, because." You have to take a box. You're going to take a box. I'm going to have 40 people working the entire weekend to fix what you just did. And actually, you know, after I kind of relaxed a bit, he's actually right, because in many cases, what we do as security people, we don't necessarily see the impact later on. I had a couple of examples later on when I deployed a new EDR in one of my companies, and I killed a big site because it saturated the line, even though the vendor said that it's never going to happen. It did happen, of course. So it's those things where you really need to think about what kind of impact you're going to have when you do something.
This actually brings me to another separate question that I had written down like down the line here, but But as you mentioned, you know, you're a CISO and you're working with the IT managers as well. And I'm assuming you are, or at least were in the past, a CISO, but as part of the IT.
IT.
I,
Yeah, well, I'm still am basically. So I report to the CIO, and actually, when I think about my previous positions, I report to the CIO. So I am part of the IT essentially.
okay. So that brings me to the following question. What do you feel about the role of a CISO that is in fact a part of IT? What are the pros and cons in your opinion?
So, so there's been, I think, an argument within the security industry for years now where the CISO position should sit, and many people say it has to report directly to the CEO or to the board. So yes, in the perfect world, I wouldn't mind reporting to the CEO or to the board, but realistically speaking, in many cases, the the CISO reports to CIO. Now, it is a kind of a conflict of interest on the one hand. On the other hand, the CIO in many cases is the only person that can actually really understand the issue of IT security. Now, many people will say, but it's a conflict of interest, right? Because the CIO doesn't care about security, he does just want to make sure everything works. I haven't yet seen CIOs that don't care about security. It might not be their highest priority. They might not want to give you all the budget that you want, but you're not different than any other IT departments. And it's very uncommon, I think, at least in my experience, that you come to a CIO and say, this is an intolerable risk, you can't do it, and the CIO will say, no, I'm just going to ignore it. It doesn't happen. Because the CIO, by the end of it, is responsible that IT works all in
Yeah.
all. So by the end of it, I think a lot of it is related to the relationship between the CIO and the CISO, but I don't think this is inherently bad. The last thing about it is that if you're part of IT, you have easy access to IT resources and to IT operations, which is by the end of it, those are the people you spend most of your time with. And also you have access to the budget of IT because you're part of the organization. And I've met CISOs who were part of the legal organization, for example, and legal traditionally doesn't have that large of a budget, which means those CISOs end up being in a consultative kind of structure when they can say what to do, but they don't really have the capacity to implement anything or to use any technological means because they don't have the budget.
Yeah, they assume the role of a guide more than like someone
Yeah,
that
exactly.
that's responsible for implementing. But you know, you mentioned you know, IT security, but as you know, a CISO is responsible for risks that not all of them necessarily rely on IT systems and platforms. So you know, you have a vast world of risks out there. Not all of them are
Correct.
IT related. So how would you deal with that?
Well, the first thing I do is that every time I go into a company, I define myself as an information security rather than IT security. Because from my perspective, I say I secure information regardless of where it is, as you said. It doesn't have to be on an IT platform. Now, my approach normally is that I assume it's my mandate until someone tells me otherwise.
Hmm.
And so far, I never had any issue because I'm coming to that area, let's say R&D, right? It's not IT. And they keep their information in different systems sometimes, or not even in systems. And I tell them, look, I'm here to help you secure your data. There's no one else in the company that will do that. What do you need? And through relationship, you manage in most cases to establish that kind of approach.
Hmm.
So even within you're sitting within IT, your mandate as a security head is typically wider than the mandate of IT. So in this position, in my previous positions, I've done things which the CIO not only is not involved, is not even aware, or she's not even aware of what I'm doing because it's not part of her everyday work. She is doing IT. I'm doing information security wherever it resides.
Okay.
Of course, when you ask for budget for something, then you need to explain that also.
Yeah, definitely. But then what would you say, like in terms of relationship building? Let's say you need a budget to improve the security in the SDLC lifecycle, right? So
Yeah.
obviously it won't come out of IT's budget, but then if it will go out of the development, the VP R&D's budget, they might want to have like a different, you know, team member that will lead that effort, right?
Yeah. I haven't had that scenario yet. It's not common for companies or for corporations to run competing security departments. I have seen attempts to do it in some of the companies I've been, but in many cases, the organization recognizes the fact that it doesn't make sense to have two competing security organizations. So, in my case, I would definitely put someone in the R&D division to be my representative over there.
Mm-hmm.
But from my perspective, I own security in the company. I shouldn't be needing to argue with other people about which policy should be done where. That, by the way, also goes for security operations, because in many companies, security operations is run by a different part than the CISO. And my approach here is always, if that person doesn't report to me directly, they need to have a very strong dotted line to me. Because if they decide to do something, let's say that person decides to run a SOC tomorrow, they can't do it in separately than what I do, because I define the threat horizon or the threats that the organization needs to compete against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So that's the approach.
yeah, that makes sense. So we started off by, I started off by asking about your biggest failure. Can I ask about your biggest accomplishment, if this is something you can share with us?
I think I would probably say my previous position when I joined CIVA, I was the number one and the only number of in the security organization. So I
Mm-hmm.
was a one-man show in a company of 60,000 people. And I was mortified. I wasn't. I was there for a few months just before the WannaCry and NotPetya started, and I didn't sleep for half a year because I thought it's just a minute before everything collapses. And through a lot of effort and hard evidence and a lot of explanation, I managed to convince the organization that they need to do something about the security, and just having a token CISO sitting in an office somewhere is not sufficient. I told them very clearly, you need the organization, you need the technology, and I need the mandate. And I think as soon as I managed to convince the powers that be, in this case was the CIO, he was very minded for the fact, as soon as I managed to convince him that there is a problem that he needs to take care of, then that's it. I wouldn't say everything that I wanted, but I got a lot. And when I left CIVA, I had a standing security organization. We had a lot of new tools that we embedded into place. We embedded the processes. We had an SDLC process. I mean, we became basically an integral part of the organization. And I wouldn't say it's complete, right? It's a very long journey in such a big company, but I felt like I did a very, very big step towards having that culture.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And by the way, did you I mean, when establishing those processes and procedures and policies, did you adopt any international framework, such as like the ISO 27001, or did you just build it like based out of industry best practices and your own experience so far?
So the organization was already certified at least partially for 27001. So I already had I had policies there that was by the book, or at least according to the standard. What I did basically, I then took them and I shortened them and simplified them significantly, because they were quite long and complicated. And by the end of the day, the policies is something that the vast majority of employees will never read, or if they read the first
Yeah,
5 lines, right? Let's be
yeah,
honest with ourselves.
correct.
So what I gave each policy had in the first page 5 lines that says, if you're not reading the policy, read those 5 lines. Those are the bare essentials. But know this, if I need to hit you on the head if you didn't follow the policy, then I'll hit you with the full force of that document. So it's recommended that you read the full policy, but if you don't, then read those 5 lines.
Okay. That's great input. Thank you. So, I know a lot of people that are just starting off their cybersecurity career right now. And, taking into consideration, you've been in this space for what, like 20 years now, even more than 20 years now, if we,
2024, something like
yeah,
that, yeah.
if we include your
Too long,
military
too long.
experience, yeah. So someone with your experience and track record, what would be the best advice you could give someone who wants to pursue a career similar to yours? Mostly to be able to integrate himself or herself into the cyberspace and achieving stature, that's it, statutes.
Um, Wow, that's a big question because I always think about the best way to describe it because it's not easy, right? I think when we started our career, it was easier because there wasn't really a clear framework or way. We just kind of drifted into this field, right?
Yeah.
Today is much more structured than it used to be. There's much more requirements. All the various certifications didn't exist back in the day. I would say probably the most important thing is understand what it is you want to do in security, because there's a perception that everyone in security are wearing hoodies and are hacking all day long, and then they go home, in their, I don't know, Lamborghinis and drink a lot of whiskey. So first of all, understand what it is you want to do, because there's a lot of fields within security, whether it's architecture, penetration testing, offensive, defensive, malware, and whatever. Understand first the field and what it is you want to do, and then start learning to achieve what it is that you want to do. And because you don't need to know everything. Going back to what I said before, you don't need to know everything, right? We talked about before that we were both part of a discussion in an Israeli cybersecurity group on Facebook, where there was a guy that came into that group and asked, "Do I have to know coding in order to work in security? Because I really don't like coding." And immediately, like 5 guys told him, "No, you have to know coding. Coding is security." And I came there and I said, "No, coding is not security. If you want to do application security, penetration testing, offensive, yes, definitely you need to know coding. But there's a lot of other fields in security that doesn't require that. So check what you want to know and then learn it." Then, of course, I've been told by several people that I'm deluding myself and I'm not really doing security. And that's maybe connecting also to the other thing I wanted to know. If you are taking a mentor or someone to learn from, then make sure that you're taking the right person to support you, not someone that they think they are the hacker king of the world, but someone who has some experience and a bit more realistic in what they do in their everyday security.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the last point of this one, and that's my personal opinion, I think that on-the-job training and practical experience is more important than certifications. I think there's a lot of discussions in the community about this. And last couple of years, it seems to me like a lot of people think that if they do have a list of abbreviations after their name in LinkedIn, that means they are accredited security professionals. That's not the case in my view. I think certifications come after the fact or during your on-the-job training, but not as a replacement for experience. If you have certifications but you've never worked in the industry, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, I tend to agree that on-the-job training is the most valuable. But I do think that, like from my personal experience, that achieving certifications through training just allows you to deepen your skills and your knowledge. And I think that's important as well, because as human beings, we always grow. I mean, at least some of us, right? So we
Yeah.
try to grow. I think that's a human trait, and I think that sometimes you need to learn more, right? And we all
Yeah.
learn more on a daily basis, whether it's through on-the-job training, but or sometimes through taking an online course or even attending a course in person. But I do agree with you that it's not just to do the training will get you through the door, right? It
Yeah.
might help you in some cases, but
Don't get me wrong, I'm all for the learning and the training. I'm just saying it's not the replacement for the real thing, quote unquote.
yeah, I
Especially
can.
since some of the accreditation bodies have their own, let's say, version of reality, right? I was in a couple of courses a few years ago where you step in, so for a very famous accreditation organization, you step into the room and the lecturer tells you, "Welcome to the world of this organization. Forget anything you know about security. You're now learning our version of security," which may or may not be correct, but this is what we're learning here.
Yeah, yeah, I probably attended the same course as
Yeah.
you. But going back to your first question, and this is where I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think it goes back to setting goals, basically, right? Because you said something about know what you want to do in security, because it's a big field. So would you say that maybe setting a goal such as become a chief information security officer in in under X years, or become a penetration testing team leader, in under Y years or anything like that, that would sum up your first point of the advice that you gave?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it is important to have aspirations or kind of, go where you want to go, right? But to give yourself a goal to be, for example, a CISO in, I don't know, X amount of years is not necessarily something you can achieve because there's a lot of factors there that you can't really impact, politics and locations and companies and the fact how visible you are to the market. So maybe having a goal of being professional in a specific part and be recognized as a professional, that's a good thing. If you want to be more exposed, then give yourself a goal of going to conferences, giving lectures in conferences or giving talks, maybe have a podcast. So these things, I think, give yourself achievable goals, because if you give yourself a goal of, I want to be a CISO of a multinational within 7 years from today, okay, I'm not sure if that's a positive thing or a good thing that you will want to pull yourself through. But yeah, by the end of it, like everything in life, you need to have some sort of attainable goal, right?
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, moving on to the next one. So wait, let me see that I didn't miss out on it. No. Okay, I think we're good. So what are the best resources that have helped you along the way?
The best
Whether,
resources.
yeah, whether, vendors, customers, employees, colleagues, anything like that. I
Yeah.
mean, what helped you?
People.
People?
People. It's always people. Yeah. I mean, if you ask me today if I want to spend $500,000 on another toy or in more people to my team, I would say without hesitation, people. You can always achieve much more with professionals working in your team than with another tool at your disposal. Just think how more valuable you will be with a very experienced application security person in comparison to, I don't know, a static code analysis tool. So people were always the most important asset, and I always prefer to have them rather than to have something else in my disposal.
Yeah, that's a recurring answer by a lot of the people I interview. Who are the 3 people who have been the most influential to you?
So remember, we thought about that answer before, and I'm giving you the very cliche or somewhat cliche answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think first of all, I would say my father, because he's been kind of a consultant for me for years, for many years. We somehow have a kind of a division within the family that I go to my mother with all the kind of emotional advice, and my dad with the more work related. Not because they can't advise the other thing, but just because it kind of appeared that structure. And every time that I had a big um, crossroads in life that I need to choose one way or the other, he was there to give me a good advice. And in many cases, it was just listening and affirming something that I already knew, but I didn't have the courage to take, so I would say. So that was first person. Second person is my wife. And in many cases, because she's the exact opposite for me, I'm a very emotional person and she's much more analytical than me. So she balances me in a way that helps me, pull through life. Basically, I go back home after I had a tough day at work. And I'm like, I did that, I did that, I did that. And she goes like, okay, now take away all the emotional stuff and think about what just happened. Is it still look that bad? No, actually, it's quite stupid. So, of course, the fact that she's the mother of the kids also helps. And then the third person I would say is my former manager in SIVA, the person that hired me for SIVA,
Mm-hmm.
who is definitely the most impressive person I ever worked with. First of all, in terms of knowledge, he ran huge IT organizations, and even though he couldn't advise me on the security stuff, he knew enough about IT to always give me a good direction. And the more important thing for him, people, again, were the most important asset. And I think the first time I encountered that was when a couple of months after I joined Siva, we had a major security incident in one of the sites, and I was very stressed out because it's my first incident in a new company. I don't know anyone. I don't have any tools at my disposal. And then he calls me, and I was sure that it's going to be like the last talk I'm going to have with him. And he goes like, "How are you doing? Are you still happy that you're here? Are you still happy that you joined, Steven? Okay, what can we do about this incident?" And I finished this conversation. Okay, you know what? You can't do these kind of things without putting too much pressure on people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I've heard this story before, and it was pretty impressive then. It's still impressive now. And thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you another a couple of quick questions here before I let you go. What is the one common myth about your profession or field that you want to debunk?
um, I think we kind of mentioned that before. It's the hoodie, or rather the perception that security is all about the glamour and the hacking and the that you can break every single thing that moves in the cyberspace. People need to understand security is a lot about hard work and a lot of it. So, you go into your organization, you want to implement something. It might take you years before you see an actual significant change, but you need to prepare for that, right? It's not like you hack it and it's finished. Now you need to fix everything that you broke as well. So it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of studying, but it's also a lot of fun as well. You get to learn everything about technology and organization, and you feel that you are actually making change, and in some cases even a positive change in the organization.
And it definitely doesn't hurt that you have so many beers around you, right? To try.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Being constantly drunk definitely helps. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's maybe that might be the best piece of advice you gave out here.
Yep.
To
Be
some of
drunk,
the
but
listeners.
on
Yeah.
Carlsberg beers, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Only on Carlsberg.
Yeah.
So and again, we know each other for possibly 20 years now. Um, and and you're familiar with my work and what it is that I do. And for those of you who doesn't know, I mean, I'm the CEO of a consulting group. I actually run a few companies in the cybersecurity and compliance space, and I like to ask a lot of the CISOs I talk with the following question: what would you have asked yourself that I didn't if you were in my shoes? In terms of like, you know, well, actually it's an open question, so anything you can think of, just put yourself in my shoes and ask yourself, what is it that I might not be asking myself?
I think, and it's more a general thing about consulting, is that you need to remember that even though you are a consultant that's coming for a limited time in the company, and you might be highly experienced, you need to match what it is you're doing to the organization that you're working within. Your reports and the risk levels you identify need to match the organization's risk appetite. So, it might be that the risk, according to OWASP, just to give an example, is critical, but that organization doesn't think it is because of X, Y, Z. And you need to also remember that everything that you recommend, someone needs to implement it. So make sure that what it is that you're trying to achieve is realistic, and it's not, you're not just giving a combination of I used a consultancy about a couple of years ago that they audited one of our systems, and then they said in their condition, the system is so bad you need to re-architecture the whole thing and build it from scratch. So, come on, you don't give these kind of advices. No one's going to follow them. It's going to go like this, and that's it. That's the end of the report. So be realistic with what it is you're recommending, match it to the style of the organization, and make sure that you write the report in a way that people who are not from security can actually understand the language of it, at least the executive summary.
And what about the personal side of things? I mean, as you said, it's all about people at the end of the day. And I'm sure you have like your, the consultants that you usually work with and your favorite vendors and so on. And I'm sure there's some kind of like a personal relationship there as well. Would you say that there's something to be done around that area?
Yeah, it's actually, you're right. It's actually more important than I mentioned. If you look at the vendors I'm working with, not all of them, right? I always meet new people, new companies, but I have like a hardcore of companies that I've been working with for years because I trust them. Because I know they're not trying to sell me for the sake of selling me, but they see me as a long-term partner. Sometimes across multiple companies. I have two companies I work with now in the third company. And with the same people, because I trust them, because I know they're trying to really, I mean, there's always a commercial interest, right? But by the end of it, it's more important for them that I'm happy with what they're doing than to sell me another piece of something. And that's, I think, is the secret. If you're trying to achieve something tomorrow, if you're trying to just sell one thing and then do your, the annual bonus and proceed, then that's not going to work, at least not for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it comes back to trust. But at
Yes.
some point you were somehow either introduced to them, or they approached you, or you inherited them. Somehow the connection was made at the beginning, right? And this actually leads me to a few of other follow-up questions here, because a lot of CISOs nowadays are overburdened and overcrowded with a lot of whatever, like emails, phone calls, LinkedIn requests. Everybody's offering you something new. I know everybody's offering me a lot of new services every day, like yeah, anything from coaching, personal coaching, to lead generation or anything like that. And I'm sure you get the same, if not more than that. So and you mentioned you work with like 2 trusted partners right now. Can you share anything about how the relationship began actually?
Began. Well, first of all, it's not 2 partners. I just mentioned a couple of them, but I have more than 2. I think in many cases I was kind of either I got introduced to them by someone that already worked with them and someone I trusted their opinion. So in many cases, that's how you do these things, and if I already have a recommendation from someone that I trust and I know, then I'll be much more open to have a conversation with them. The other thing is that sometimes it's as easy as actually looking for a very specific solution that you're looking for, and then you reach out to the company rather than they reach out to you, and then of course you kind of form your own impression. On the opposite side, I can say basically exactly what you said. The amount of phones, LinkedIn messages, and emails I get is astounding. And what keeps amazing me is the fact that everyone thinks they're the only person that are talking with me. So, do you have 15 minutes tomorrow to have a quick conversation on this? It's like, no, I don't have 15 minutes to go to the toilet tomorrow. And there's like 50 other people asking for 50 minutes. And it's not because I don't want to talk with you. I just don't have the time and I don't have the capacity and the attention span to talk with so many vendors. So don't think you're the only person. And if you are sending me an email, then make sure that you don't send me a whole lecture of why your solution is needed. I just got an email yesterday from a company that does phishing simulation. And it was like, did you know that 91% of security incidents starting with a phishing email? Yes, this has been the statistic since 1998. Come on, stop sending these kind of emails. So yeah, so basically it's just stand out from the crowd, be realistic about what you're offering and how you offer it. And if I'm not answering the first or the second email, I'm probably not going to answer the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th email as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, this is pretty much in alignment from what I've been hearing all around. And touching more about that, what's the most annoying sales pitch you've encountered recently, or ever?
Recently?
Or ever?
I was thinking about, since we had a pre-conversation actually, and I had a story I didn't mention previously. It was actually a bit unique because I ended up actually threatening to call the police on that company. What happened was it was actually a recruitment company, like a cybersecurity recruitment company. So it wasn't a standard vendor. And what they did is they contacted me, and they said that they want to work with me, basically to help me find candidates. I was recruiting at the time. I said, okay, I'm happy to have a conversation, but I'm not the one determining the recruitment companies. You need to get HR approvals. So they said, okay, we'll talk with HR and we'll come back to you. And they came back after 2 days. I said, okay, HR said we can work with you. And I said, okay, I know the company's HR. It takes them generations to move. Probably that didn't happen. So I said, let me check with them. And then I checked with HR. Of course, HR told me, no, they told me that you said we should work with them. And then I have an email from my boss saying, oh, I heard that they told me that you recommended them. And then my deputy also said, hey, they contacted me, said that I should talk with them because you said so. So it was like they did it all over the place. And then I told them, guys, that's it. I don't want to hear from you anymore. I don't work with flyers, basically, especially not in HR field. And they kept calling and they kept sending me messages. I ended up blacklisting them across the whole organization in terms of email. And then 2 years later, when I moved to another company, they start calling me there again. At that point, I said, if I hear from you again, I'm going to call the police for harassment, because it was too much. So, it's a bit unusual, but it's go back to what I said. Don't lie. If you want to sell something, especially in the security area, where people are built on trust and risk management. If you sell by lying to someone, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it should be pretty transparent, right? But obviously it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
that's
not.
definitely one of the most bizarre stories I've heard. But I'm still collecting those, so the
Yeah.
jury is still out on the most
On the winner.
yeah, on the winner of the most bizarre story.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're actually looking for in a vendor? And if you can share any story about that.
I think, first of all, when I'm looking for a vendor, first of all, is someone that fulfills a need, right? Not just someone who thinks they have the best solution ever. I need to need what you need, and I need to see that you actually understand what you're selling. Because in many cases, when I have, or not many cases, in some cases, when I talk with the initial salesperson, they can't answer the more technical questions. So that's okay. If you don't know, why are you talking to me? So it needs to stand out a little bit from the crowd, and they need to actually give you something that will fit with the rest of your ecosystem, because it's a known problem in security where there's so many tools and many of them don't talk with each other. So I can't buy something that will be so out of sync with the rest of the organization. I need to write APIs from here until eternity. I need to have something that can have some basic integration with my ecosystem. And I need to get something that will not generate more work than solving the problem. If you buy I don't know, some sort of GRC system, it can give you an amazing risk management platform, but then you have to spend 2 years actually implementing it, then you're not achieving what it is you're aiming to. And by the end of it, again, it's a vendor that I need to trust. It's people that I need to see that they will stay with me after the sales process, they will support me, that them actually having a successful implementation and ongoing relationship is as important of the initial sales process. Because by the end of it, we're not getting married, but we're getting as close as we can in some cases.
Yeah. So is there any way at all possible that vendors, like new vendors, can actually reach out to you or connect to you in a non-intrusive manner? Or is just, it's always the same, go back to your network and you're the initiator of any such contact?
No, not at all. But it just means that they need to somehow stand out from the crowd, right? Either via LinkedIn or via email. So don't use the standardized robot emails or templates. Or I've seen a trend recently of people sending pictures, I don't know if you've seen that, pictures with like a writing board. Hi Tal, I'm not a robot. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen this
I
one.
haven't seen
But the
that
funny
yet.
thing, you haven't seen that? I've seen it recently quite a lot. The funny thing is that I got an email like that one day, I think a couple weeks ago, but then my deputy comes back and he's got the same email saying, hey, I'm not a robot, but with his name on it. So, okay, you might as well be a robot. Stand out from the crowd. Give me a solution that I need. Investigate not only the company I work for and what the company actually needs, but also investigate maybe a little bit me. If you send me an email about how phishing is bad, then I've been doing this for so long now. I don't need that kind of approach. And make it a bit more personal. And then in many cases that actually works. I can't promise it will work every time because of the amount of emails I'm getting, but it definitely has a better chance than the standard templated emails.
Okay, so basically you invite vendors to stock and
no, not to stock. But I mean, okay, maybe not investigate me, but assume that if I have 20 years of experience, I know something about security, right? And don't do cold calls, right? I don't do cold calls. I don't react to that very well. Like, hi, am I interrupting? Do I have 5 minutes? No, you're interrupting. I don't have 5 minutes. Goodbye.
Yeah. Okay. That's gold. Where can our listeners connect with you online? I mean, if and I think you've mentioned before that you have a blog that you publish from time to time.
Yeah, I'm not very good with publishing. Like it takes probably months between one post to another. But I'm on Medium under not a security guru, and it's important. It's not a security guru. And I think I mentioned to you last time that the reason I call it like that is because I was in an interview for a CISO position a few years ago with a big insurance company, and it was a pretty good interview. And then the last question they asked me, do you define yourself as a security guru? And I said, no, because it's a meaningless term. And there's a few people in the industry I would say are gurus, but I wouldn't think they're fit for CISO position because they're scientists, they're researchers, that people that build the technology. And they said thank you, and then they told me I didn't get a job because I'm not a security guru. So I said, okay, that's a gem. I need to call myself like that.
Yeah.
So I have a blog on Medium called Non-Security Guru. I have a Twitter handle, the same name. Again, I'm not very active on Twitter. I mostly read there, but and of course LinkedIn.
Okay.
But mention it's because of the blog. Otherwise, I'm not. I don't connect to people that I don't know normally. You know, you can't be in security for more than 20 years without becoming paranoid, right?
Yeah. So not a security guru by Tal Arad.
No, that's the
Oh
handle
yeah.
that I use on
Okay.
Medium as well. Yeah,
Not a
yeah,
security guru. Simple as that. Okay. Got
yeah.
it. And by the way, how do you pronounce your name in English? Is it Tal Arad or?
Yeah, Tal. Like I pronounce it like I pronounce it in Israel. It's like
Yeah.
depending on where I am, the Dutch tend to call me Tol, and the Danish tend to call me something unpronounceable. So I'll just give up.
Yeah, skip that. Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of more quick questions here. What's the single most important thing to you in your career?
The single most. Ooh, I don't know if I can match one of it. I think going home end of the day and feel like I made a difference. Even if it's something small, and something that it's a small achievement or a small like this. If I go home and I felt like I did something, then I think that makes my day. Basically,
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of frustrations in security. It's not an easy job. You tend to kind of bump heads with other people, and you're perceived as an evil guy. But by the end of the day, if I go home and I said I made someone's life better, then that's it. For me, it's I've done it.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to feel the same. You know, some days. If you had unlimited funds, what would you do with your life?
Wow. Probably travel to some exotic island somewhere, and I don't know, maybe read a book, play music. Not read a book, sorry, write a book because I read anyway. Play a lot of music, just sit on the beach all day long and then chill. I'll probably get bored after a couple of months, but at least
Probably.
perceptually it sounds good. Yeah,
Yeah, perceptionally it does.
yeah.
And speaking about books, have you read or listened to anything recently that inspired you and you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mentioned that there's a podcast in Israel, which unfortunately is in Hebrew, so you need to understand Hebrew to listen to that one. It's one of the funniest blogs in cybersecurity I've listened to, and it's called Cyber. And it's a couple of really hardcore technical people that break everything they see, but the way they actually describe it is just ridiculous. So it's
Cyber.
just a really recommended. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I'll definitely listen at least to one of those. Okay, great. So, I think we were able to get a lot out of you. I think you shared some valuable insights here about vendor relationship management. What makes you tick? What's interesting to you in your professional life mostly? And I really appreciate the time that you took in having the preliminary call with me and having this recorded session right now. Anything I could do to help, I will. And and thank you again for your time, Tal.
Sure, my pleasure. Take care.
Thanks.